When Leo rolled down his window that Thursday night and said to my neighbor, "If she dies, let me know so I can," the rest of his sentence drowned under the roar of a passing garbage truck. But those 5 words? They carved themselves into my skull like an epitaph. This was the man I'd trusted for 3 months straight. The man I brought coffee to every single night after my shift ended at the hospital. The same man who sat quietly in the driver's seat when I sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe, who never once asked why my eyes were always swollen, who felt like the only safe thing left in my demolished life. And now he was casually discussing my death with Mr. Huang like they were planning a neighborhood barbecue. I stood frozen on my porch, keys digging into my palm, watching his taillights disappear into the rain. My heart wasn't just racing, it was trying to claw its way out of my chest. Because if Leo wanted me dead, I'd been serving him the perfect opportunity every night for 92 days. I'd been handing my potential killer coffee with a smile. Most people ignore red flags until it's too late. Subscribe so you're never caught off guard like I was. Hit that button now. But to understand why those 5 words shattered me, you need to know how Marcus really died. 6 months ago, my husband wrapped his car around an oak tree on Highway 52 going 70 miles an hour. The police said it was an accident, wet roads, poor visibility, tragic timing. Except they also mentioned something in passing, something that haunted me during every sleepless night since. They found marks on the brake line. Not rust. Not wear and tear. Clean cuts, deliberate, surgical. But they couldn't prove foul play, couldn't find a suspect, couldn't give me anything except a closed casket and a life insurance check that felt like blood money. Marcus and I had been married for 8 years. We bought our dream house 2 years before he died, a little craftsman bungalow with a porch swing and a garden I never learned to maintain. What Marcus never told me was that he'd buried us in $80,000 of debt. Medical bills I didn't know existed. Business loans I'd never signed. Credit cards in both our names maxed out to suffocation. The insurance money kept the house, but barely. I couldn't afford to grieve. I couldn't afford to fall apart. So I took the only job that paid enough to keep me afloat, night shift at County General, cleaning surgical instruments and mopping floors while doctors saved lives I couldn't. That's where Leo came in. My first night, I stumbled out of the hospital at 11 p.m., bone-tired and emotionally gutted, only to realize the bus didn't run that late. I opened a rideshare app with shaking fingers, and Leo's face popped up. Warm brown eyes. Salt and pepper beard. 4.9 stars. He pulled up in a navy sedan that smelled like vanilla and old leather, and when I climbed into the back seat, he said exactly 6 words the entire ride: rough night, and later, you're home safe. No prying. No small talk. No performative sympathy. It was perfect. The next night, same thing. He accepted my ride request within seconds, like he'd been waiting. By week 2, it wasn't just routine, it was ritual. I started bringing him coffee from the hospital cafeteria. Nothing fancy, just black with 2 sugars, the way he mentioned once that his daughter used to make it. He'd take it with both hands, nod once, and we'd drive in comfortable silence. He knew my address by heart. Knew my schedule down to the minute. Knew that Thursdays were the hardest because that's the day Marcus died. I thought I was building trust. Looking back now, with my stomach twisted into knots and my doorbell camera footage burning a hole in my phone, I realize I'd been under surveillance. The night Leo said those words to Mr. Huang, I didn't sleep. I replayed every interaction we'd ever had, searching for proof I'd been too grief-blind to see. How Leo always watched me walk to my door before driving away. How he knew Mr. Huang's name without me ever mentioning it. How he'd once asked if I lived alone, and I'd stupidly answered yes. How the coffee I gave him was the same coffee Marcus used to drink, the same brand, the same temperature. What if I'd been poisoning myself by proxy? What if Leo had been waiting for me to slip, to forget to lock my door, to stay late one night where there weren't cameras? I thought about Marcus's brake line. The deliberate cuts. What if it wasn't random? What if Marcus had discovered something, known something, and Leo had been cleaning up loose ends? My husband dies in a suspicious accident. 6 months later, the same driver picks me up 92 nights in a row. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. I installed a doorbell camera the next morning, hands shaking so hard I nearly stripped the screws. Then I went back through the footage from the past month, looking for anything I'd missed. And there it was. 3 separate occasions where Leo and Mr. Huang stood on the sidewalk between our houses, talking in low voices. Once at 6 a.m. Once at midnight. Once on a Sunday afternoon when I was at the grocery store. They knew each other. Not casually. Not neighbor to passerby. They knew each other well enough to have private conversations my camera barely caught. My 74-year-old neighbor, who'd lived next door since before Marcus and I moved in, who brought us oranges from his tree every Christmas, who cried at Marcus's funeral, he was involved. I felt my reality crack down the middle. If I couldn't trust Leo, and I couldn't trust Mr. Huang, then who? What if Marcus's death wasn't about money or business or random violence? What if it was about me? What if I was the target, and Marcus just got in the way? I couldn't go to the police. I had no proof, just paranoia and a half-heard sentence. I couldn't confront Leo directly. What if that triggered whatever he'd been planning? So I did the only thing I could think of. I stopped requesting him. I used different rideshare drivers, different routes, different times. For 1 week, I avoided Leo entirely. And that's when things got worse. The new drivers were all wrong. Too chatty, asking where I worked and if I lived alone. Too quiet, staring at me in the rearview mirror. One of them drove past my house twice before finally stopping, claiming his GPS was broken. I started carrying pepper spray. Started checking the backseat before getting in. Started texting my coworker Jenny my location every 10 minutes like a paranoid teenager. And then, 8 days after I'd last seen Leo, Mr. Huang knocked on my door. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. His hands trembled as he held out a manila envelope, the kind you buy at office supply stores, worn at the edges like it had been opened and closed 100 times. "That driver friend of yours," he said, voice cracking, "he left this before Marcus passed." The world tilted. I took the envelope with numb fingers, and Mr. Huang stepped back like it might explode. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. Marcus's handwriting, unmistakable, the same slanted scrawl he used for grocery lists and birthday cards. The ink was blue. The date at the top was 2 weeks before he died. And the first line made my knees buckle. "Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm gone." My vision blurred. I gripped the doorframe to keep from collapsing as I read the next paragraph, each word a landmine detonating in my chest. "Leo is my half-brother. Dad's son from his first marriage, the one he never talked about. I found him 6 months ago through one of those DNA ancestry tests I took as a joke. Turns out Dad had a whole other family in Seattle he abandoned when I was 2. Leo reached out, and we met in secret because I didn't know how to tell you I'd been lying about where I went on Thursdays. I wasn't working late, Evelyn. I was dying." The letter shook in my hands. Marcus continued, his words punching through my ribcage one sentence at a time. "The headaches I blamed on stress? Stage 4 glioblastoma. 6 months to live, maybe less. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't watch you become my nurse, couldn't watch you drown in medical bills while I rotted away in a hospice bed. The life insurance policy only pays out for accidental death, $500,000. Enough to clear our debts and give you a fresh start. The brake line wasn't tampered by an enemy, Evelyn. I cut it myself." I stopped breathing. The porch spun. Mr. Huang was saying something, but I couldn't hear him over the roar of blood in my ears. "Marcus killed himself. Marcus killed himself and made it look like murder so I'd get the insurance money. And Leo wasn't a stalker. He was family. Family I didn't know existed, trying to honor a dying man's last wish. But the letter wasn't finished. I made Leo promise to watch over you. Not like a creep, I know how this sounds, but you don't have family, Evelyn. Your parents are gone. Your sister hasn't called in 4 years. You'd be alone. Leo understands loss. His daughter Emma died of the same cancer I have, 3 years ago. He knows what it's like to be the one left behind. I asked him to make sure you're safe, that you're eating, that someone checks if you don't come home. I know it's not fair to him, but he's the only family I trust. There's one more thing I need him to do. If you die before finishing what I started. The letter ended. Not with a period or a signature. Just a jagged tear across the bottom third of the page, like someone had ripped it in half. I looked up at Mr. Huang, who was still standing in my doorway, pale and shaking. Where's the rest? I whispered. His face went gray. I thought Leo gave you everything, he said. He told me he was protecting you from the truth until you were ready. That's when I knew. Leo was still hiding something. And whatever Marcus started? Someone didn't want me to finish it. If you're not subscribed, you're missing the second half of this story, and trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. Subscribe now before you lose the thread. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bedroom floor with Marcus's torn letter spread in front of me like a crime scene photograph, reading those words until they stopped making sense and started making too much sense all at once. My husband had lied to me for 6 months. Lied about Thursday meetings that were actually chemo appointments he never took. Lied about headaches that were brain tumors eating him alive. Lied about loving me enough to fight, when really he loved me enough to die on his own terms so I could survive on his insurance money. And Leo, God, Leo, he wasn't my stalker. He was my brother-in-law. A man who'd lost his own daughter to the same disease and still showed up every single night to make sure I got home safe because Marcus had begged him to. But that torn letter haunted me. If you die before finishing what I started, what had Marcus started? Why would I die? And why had Leo ripped away the answer? Something bigger is happening here, and most people would have missed it. Subscribe so you never miss the warning signs that could save your life. I confronted Mr. Huang the next morning before the sun came up, pounding on his door until he answered in his bathrobe looking terrified. Tell me everything, I demanded, shoving the letter in his face. Why did Leo give this to you? What did Marcus start? Mr. Huang's hands shook as he let me inside, and what he told me made my blood turn to ice. Leo had visited him 3 times before Marcus died, always late at night, always carrying envelopes. Marcus had made Mr. Huang promise to look out for signs but never explained what signs. Then the night Marcus died, the real night, not the accident night, but the night 2 weeks before when he wrote that letter, Leo showed up at Mr. Huang's house at 2 in the morning, sobbing so hard he could barely stand, clutching the torn letter in his fists. He made me promise not to tell you until you were ready, Mr. Huang whispered. But Evelyn, Marcus didn't just kill himself to give you insurance money. He killed himself because he found out something that would have gotten you both murdered. And whoever he found out about? They're still watching you. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of Mr. Huang's kitchen table so hard my knuckles went white. Who? I asked, but I already knew the answer was in that missing half of the letter. Mr. Huang shook his head. Leo has it. He's the only one who knows the whole truth. But he told me if anything happened to you, if you died suddenly or disappeared, I was supposed to call a number he gave me and tell them to check your bedroom dresser. That's where Marcus hid the evidence. I was out the door before Mr. Huang finished his sentence, sprinting across the wet grass in my pajamas, phone already open to the rideshare app. I requested Leo. He accepted in 4 seconds. By the time I threw on real clothes and grabbed my keys, his navy sedan was idling in my driveway, windshield wipers cutting through the pre-dawn rain. I didn't get in the backseat this time. I yanked open the passenger door and slid in next to him, and the look on his face told me he'd been expecting this. You found the letter, Leo said quietly. Not a question. A statement. His hands gripped the steering wheel like he was bracing for impact, and I noticed for the first time how much he looked like Marcus around the eyes, the same deep-set brown, the same sadness that never quite left. I found half of it, I snapped. Where's the rest? What did Marcus start? And don't you dare lie to me like he did. Leo closed his eyes, exhaled slowly, and then did something I didn't expect. He didn't drive toward my house. He turned left toward the industrial district, toward the stretch of Highway 52 where Marcus had died, toward the oak tree that still had scorch marks on its trunk. We need to talk, he said, voice barely above a whisper, about what your husband really discovered before he killed himself. And about the man who's been waiting for you to find it so he can finish what Marcus interrupted. We parked at the crash site. Rain hammered the roof of the car, turning the world outside into a gray blur, and Leo finally turned to face me. Marcus didn't just find me through a DNA test, he began. He was investigating our father's death. Robert died 2 years ago, sudden heart attack, very convenient, very clean. Left everything to Marcus in the will. Nothing to me, which made sense since Robert abandoned my mother when I was 6 months old. But Marcus felt guilty. Started digging into the estate, found irregularities in the will, found altered bank statements, found evidence that our father's financial advisor had been embezzling for years. My stomach dropped. Vincent, I whispered. Marcus's business partner. The man who'd sent flowers to the funeral. The man who'd called me twice a week after Marcus died, asking if I needed help with financial matters. Leo's jaw tightened. Vincent Shaw. He was Robert's advisor first, then became Marcus's partner when they started the consulting firm. Marcus discovered Vincent had been stealing from both of them for 3 years, over $1 million, hidden in offshore accounts and shell companies. But it was worse than that. Leo pulled a folder from his glove compartment, hands shaking, and spread photographs across the dashboard. Bank records. Email printouts. Toxicology reports I didn't understand. Marcus believed Vincent poisoned Robert, Leo said. Digitalis. Small doses over 6 months, made it look like heart failure. Robert was about to audit the company books. Vincent couldn't let that happen. So he killed him, rewrote the will to make sure Marcus inherited the debt along with the business, and waited. But Marcus was smarter than Vincent expected. He found the evidence, started building a case, and that's when he got his cancer diagnosis. I stared at the photographs, my brain trying to catch up with the nightmare unfolding in front of me. Why didn't he go to the police? I asked, but even as I said it, I knew. Leo nodded. He tried. Brought everything to a detective he trusted. 3 days later, the detective died in a home invasion. Nothing stolen. Just dead. Marcus knew then that Vincent had connections, that going public would get you both killed. So he made a different plan. The suicide, I breathed. Leo's eyes met mine, and I saw Marcus in them, the same desperate determination, the same willingness to sacrifice everything for the people he loved. He figured if he died in an accident, Vincent would think the investigation died with him. The insurance money would clear the debt and get you out of Vincent's crosshairs. And he made me promise 2 things, watch over you, and finish collecting evidence so we could bring Vincent down after you were safe. I felt tears burning down my face, hot and furious and grief-soaked all at once. You let me think you were a murderer, I choked out. You let me think I was going crazy instead of just telling me the truth. Leo's voice cracked. You were barely surviving, Evelyn. If I told you Vincent was dangerous, you would have either shut down completely or done something reckless that would have gotten you killed. I needed you alive long enough to. His phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times in rapid succession. He looked at the screen and went pale. Oh God. He turned the phone toward me. 3 text messages from an unknown number, each one a photograph. The first, my bedroom. My dresser. The drawer where I kept Marcus's old things. The second, that same drawer, opened, empty. The third, a message that made my heart stop. Tell Evelyn I'll be waiting at First National Bank tomorrow at noon. Come alone, or I release the real story about Marcus's suicide to the press. Insurance fraud, life insurance revoked, and she loses everything. Let's see how much she's willing to risk to finish what her dead husband started. It was signed with initials I recognized from Marcus's business cards. V.S. Vincent Shaw. He knew. He'd always known. And now he had the evidence. Still think you don't need to subscribe? If this was happening to you, wouldn't you want to know how it ends? Hit subscribe before you miss the final twist. Leo was already dialing, his voice tight and controlled as he spoke to someone on the other end. Torres, it's Leo Brennan. He made contact. We need to move now. He listened for a moment, then looked at me. Agent Torres is FBI. Marcus gave him everything before he died, copies of the bank records, the toxicology reports, emails proving Vincent embezzled from Robert and the company. But it wasn't enough for an arrest. We needed Vincent to make a move, to prove he knew about the evidence and was willing to commit another crime to cover it up. That text? That's conspiracy to commit blackmail. But we need him to say more. We need a confession. I stared at Leo like he'd lost his mind. You want me to meet him? Alone? At a bank where he can kill me in a private room? Leo shook his head. Not alone. I'll be across the street with Torres and 2 other agents. You'll wear a wire. Get him talking about Robert, about Marcus, about why he needs that evidence destroyed. The second he admits to murder or embezzlement, we move in. But Evelyn, he grabbed my hand, and his grip was desperate. If you don't want to do this, we'll find another way. I won't let you die for this. Marcus already sacrificed enough. I thought about Marcus writing that letter, knowing he had weeks to live, choosing to spend them protecting me instead of saying goodbye. I thought about Robert, poisoned slowly in his own home by a man he trusted. I thought about Leo's daughter Emma, and how grief had carved him hollow, but he still showed up every night to keep a promise to a brother he barely knew. And I thought about Vincent, smug, patient Vincent, who'd sent me sympathy flowers and called to check in while waiting for me to die so his secrets would stay buried. I'll do it, I said. But I want him to know it was me. When he realizes he lost, I want him to see my face. The next day, I walked into First National Bank at 11:55 wearing a wire so thin I couldn't feel it against my skin. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I'd spent the morning with Agent Torres rehearsing questions, learning how to pivot conversations, how to stay calm when Vincent tried to intimidate me. Leo had watched from the corner of the FBI field office, arms crossed, jaw tight, looking like he wanted to call the whole thing off. But he didn't. Because he understood what I'd finally realized: Marcus didn't die to save me from debt. He died to give me time. Time to find Leo. Time to learn the truth. Time to become strong enough to finish what he started. And I wasn't going to waste it. Vincent was waiting in a private conference room the bank manager had provided, sitting at the head of a polished table like he owned the building. He stood when I entered, all fake sympathy and practiced concern, and gestured to the chair across from him. Evelyn. You look exhausted. I've been worried about you. I sat down slowly, placing my purse on the table between us. You said you have something of Marcus's. Vincent smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Straight to business. I always admired that about you. Yes, I have the documents Marcus hid in your dresser, bank records, emails, some very creative accusations about embezzlement and murder. He was paranoid toward the end, you know. The cancer affected his judgment. He slid a folder across the table. I'm willing to forget he ever made these ridiculous claims. All I need is for you to sign a statement saying Marcus was mentally unstable before he died, that anything he said or wrote was the product of delusion. In exchange, I'll make sure the insurance company never finds out his accident was actually suicide. You keep the money. I keep my reputation. Everyone wins. I opened the folder slowly, scanning the documents I'd never seen before: offshore account transfers, forged signatures, timelines that proved Vincent had been stealing from Robert for years before he died. These aren't delusions, I said quietly. These are evidence. Evidence that you killed Robert. Evidence that you tried to kill Marcus before the cancer did it for you. Vincent's smile vanished. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a bug he was deciding whether to crush. Careful, Evelyn. Grief makes people say stupid things. Things that can't be taken back. I met his eyes and didn't blink. Did you kill him? Did you poison Robert and rewrite his will so Marcus would inherit the debt? For a long moment, Vincent said nothing. Then he laughed. A cold, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. Robert was a fool. He would have ruined everything, just like Marcus. But Marcus made it easy, didn't he? Drove himself into a tree. Saved me the trouble. My heart stopped. Torres had said we needed him to confess, but I hadn't expected it to be this simple, this arrogant. Vincent kept talking, his voice dropping to something almost conversational. Though I'll admit, cutting his brake line first was good insurance. If he'd chickened out on the suicide, the job would have been done anyway. Can't have loose ends, Evelyn. And you? He leaned forward, eyes cold. You were always a loose end. But you were also grieving, harmless, easy to monitor. I figured you'd drink yourself to death or move away within a year. I didn't expect you to start looking for answers. He reached into his jacket, and every muscle in my body tensed. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a flash drive. This contains every copy Marcus made. Every backup. Every insurance policy. Sign the statement, and it's yours. Refuse, and I'll make sure the IRS, the insurance company, and every creditor Marcus owed comes after you so hard you'll wish you'd died with him. I stared at the flash drive, at Vincent's smug expression, at the folder full of evidence that proved he was a murderer. And then I did exactly what Torres had told me to do. I pushed back from the table and said, loud and clear, you just confessed to attempted murder and conspiracy to commit fraud. I hope it was worth it. Vincent's face went white. He lunged across the table, grabbing for my arm, but the door exploded open before he reached me. Agent Torres stormed in with 2 other agents, weapons drawn, shouting commands that blurred together in my ringing ears. Vincent froze, hands in the air, his eyes locked on mine with pure hatred. You set me up, he hissed. I stood slowly, pulling the wire from under my shirt and letting it dangle between us like a noose. No, I said. Marcus set you up. I just finished what he started. This is exactly why you need to subscribe, because real justice doesn't always come easy, and you'll want to see how these people get what they deserve. Don't miss the aftermath. Subscribe now. They arrested Vincent on 6 charges. Embezzlement, murder in the first degree for Robert's death, attempted murder for tampering with Marcus's brakes, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, blackmail, and obstruction of justice. The trial took 8 months. I testified 3 times, each one harder than the last, reliving Marcus's final weeks and the lies I'd believed were love. Leo sat in the gallery every single day, and afterward we'd get coffee at the same cafe where Marcus used to meet him on Thursdays. Real coffee this time, not the burnt hospital sludge I'd been bringing him for months. He told me stories about Emma, about the daughter he lost and the grief that never really leaves. I told him about Marcus, about the husband I loved and resented in equal measure. And slowly, painfully, we became the family Marcus had wanted us to be. Vincent was sentenced to life without parole for Robert's murder and 25 years for attempting to kill Marcus. The judge called him a danger to society, a man who valued money over human life. I didn't feel victorious when they read the verdict. I felt tired. Hollowed out. Like I'd run a marathon through broken glass and finally reached the finish line only to realize the race had cost me everything. The insurance money stayed intact. Marcus's suicide letter was ruled inadmissible since it was written under extreme emotional duress, and the brake line tampering proved there was an external threat to his life. I used it to pay off the debts, sold the house with its ghosts and blood-soaked memories, and started over in a smaller place across town. No porch swing. No garden. Just clean walls and empty rooms I could fill with something other than grief. 6 months after the trial ended, Leo and I opened a victim advocacy nonprofit called Emma and Marcus Legacy. We help families targeted by financial predators, people who've lost loved ones to white-collar criminals who think money makes them untouchable. Leo uses his investigative skills. Turns out he used to be a private detective before Emma got sick, and I use my story. I tell people that justice is possible. That the dead can still protect us if we're brave enough to listen. That sometimes the stranger who picks you up at 11 p.m. isn't a threat, he's family you didn't know you needed. We visit Marcus's grave together once a month. I bring flowers. Leo brings coffee, the kind with 2 sugars, and pours it on the grass like an offering. And I talk to Marcus like he's still here, still listening, still trying to save me from 6 feet under. I was so angry at you, I tell him, tracing his name on the headstone with shaking fingers. For lying. For choosing death over fighting. For deciding your life was worth less than money. But you didn't, did you? You decided my life was worth more than your pride. And I hate that I understand now. I hate that I'd probably do the same thing if I loved someone enough. The wind picks up, scattering leaves across the cemetery, and I swear I can feel Marcus there, not as a ghost, but as a memory that's finally softened enough to hold without bleeding. Leo puts a hand on my shoulder, steady and warm, and we stand there in silence until the sun starts to set. People ask me all the time if I forgive Marcus for what he did. Honestly? Some days yes. Some days no. He took away my choice, my chance to say goodbye, my right to fight beside him instead of after him. But he also saved my life. Gave me a family I didn't know existed. Turned his death into a weapon that brought down a killer. Was he a hero or a coward? I'm still deciding. But here's what I know for sure, grief makes you do impossible things. Marcus drove into a tree. I brought coffee to a stranger for 3 months and trusted him with my life. Vincent thought he could bury the truth with bodies and offshore accounts. We all made choices. We all lived with consequences. And in the end, the only question that matters is this: if someone you loved was dying and could save you by destroying themselves, would you want them to? Or would you rather burn together and call it love? I don't have an answer. Maybe you do. If you're still not subscribed, comment below and tell me why. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, hit that like button. You won't regret it.